friends, the cry rising from the lands watered with the blood of over 130,000 children, women, and civilians in Gaza is not just a statistic today. It is a mass grave of modern civilization, human dignity, and conscience. This is not a conflict, but, in the words of the sources, an outright Gaza genocide. And we are here today to expose, name by name and data by data, the mentality that commits this massacre and the global powers that have become its #1 servants. Welcome all of you to the Voice of Truth podcast. Today we open the darkest files that are whispered behind screens and closed doors, but which the mainstream media remains silent about as if they have swallowed their tongues. We will discuss one by one how those names on the so-called influential leaders list of the Zionist regime are actually cogs in a crime machine. What kind of servant politics the White House in Washington pursues in this bloody theater, and what is being liquidated under the mask of a peace plan. We will put everything on the table, from Epstein's disgusting, filth-reeking networks reaching into Turkey, to Trump's arrogant confessions on the cap stage. If you enjoy such content, please subscribe, like the video, and drop a hype. If you are ready, let us begin. Lean back. Take a sip of your tea, because what I will tell you today will shake not only the world, but also your perspective. Now let us take a deep breath and speak sincerely from the heart. Take a sip of your tea or coffee. Look around you. Everywhere there are speeches about democracy, freedom, and universal human rights, right? But on the other hand, while thousands of children are being murdered in front of cameras, the hands of those giving these speeches are calloused from applauding. It hurts, friends. It really hurts. Now it is time to ask this rhetorical question. How did the modern world come to embrace a mentality that is the murderer of humanity under the mask of democracy? And how did America become the #1 servant of this crime? How did this system rot so much that a killing machine is marketed as self-defense? Today we will pull the answer to this question from the very data they trust so much and shatter this illusion. Friends, we have the March 2025 data from the Berman Jewish DataBank. This data tells us not just numbers, but the moral blindness of a society. Look, 71% of American Jews feel emotionally attached to Israel. In 2020, that rate was 58%. Can you imagine? While not a single stone is left upon another in Gaza, while 130,000 children, women, and civilians have been laid into the ground, this attachment is increasing. Even 60% say that Israel makes them feel proud to be Jewish. The so-called birthright effect, especially in the 35-44 age group, is actually the success of a brainwashing session. If these people look at this killing machine and feel pride, is it possible to speak of humanity there? Look at Ynet News' list of the 30 most influential Jewish leaders. #1 is Benjamin Netanyahu. They market him as Mr. Security, yet we know that he is the main architect who turned modern Israel not into a security fortress, but into a crime network that is the murderer of humanity. And is it only him? No. Look at the rest of the list. Mark Zuckerberg, the man who manages the world's digital squares and perceptions through Meta. Sam Altman, the visionary turning artificial intelligence into a new weapon of war and control. Bill Ackman, the hedge fund billionaire who throws around $150 million donation threats to crush critics of Israel at universities like Harvard. Safra Katz and Alex Karp, the technology barons who put defense and intelligence networks at the service of the Israeli army through companies like Palantir. This crime network fights not only with tanks, but also with algorithms and money. Pay attention to the articles of the Gaza Peace Plan, the famous, comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. Mentioned in our sources, what do they say? In the second phase, demilitarization and a stabilization force. Friends, the Turkish translation of this terminology is this: we will tie the hands of the Palestinians, take away their right to defend themselves, and install a colonial police force disguised as international over them. This is not a peace plan, it is a document of enslavement and liquidation. This mentality, which is the murderer of humanity, tries to sell its occupation to the world under the name of stability. the path to statehood promised in the third phase of the plan is tied to Israel's security conditions, a carrot that will never materialize. Now let us come to the number one logistical and political servant of this crime network, the United States of America. Let us recall Trump's 2020 CPAC speech. This speech is actually a series of confessions. When he gets on the podium and shouts, "I am the best friend of Jewish Americans, their greatest protector," he is actually describing how a state has been surrendered to an ideology. Trump describes killing Soleimani as a great act of heroism, labeling him the father of roadside bombs, and then exploits emotions through the story of American soldiers who lost their legs because of those plastic bombs. But the same Trump, while complaining that a dog named Conan got more media attention than the American president, inadvertently reveals that the whole matter is a theater. Look at the White House's January 30, 2025 report on combating anti-Semitism. This document is proof of how America puts its own laws at the service of Israel. They threaten to expel students from universities and cancel their visas for being pro-Hamas, when in reality those students only say, "Let the children not die." The instruction to the Department of Justice is clear: punish anti-Jewish racism and leftist, anti-American universities. So criticizing Israel is now being attempted to be categorized as a crime in America. Trump proudly says, "I moved the embassy to Jerusalem, recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, signed the Abraham Accords." Did these accords bring peace to the region? No. These accords gave a bloody checkbook to Israel and tried to trap the Arab world in this network of servitude. Trump's words, "I am your best friend," actually mean I am the most loyal servant of this system. The price of this loyalty is the fresh blood spilled every day in the Middle East. What fuels this massive crime machine? Money, money, money. According to sources, Trump raised over $207 million in the short period after the election, and more than $495 million in total. Who gives this money? Casino billionaire Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam Adelson. In just one cycle, they pumped $210 million into the system. This toxic money is a poison injected into the veins of American politics. This money flow is also the real engine behind projects like the Gaza Peace Plan. The plan includes nice-sounding, conscience-soothing words like reconstruction and humanitarian aid, but in reality, the aim is to turn the Palestinian people into unarmed, defenseless, and economically dependent subjects in their own land. Trump's ultimatums like "I am giving Hamas until October 5th" are actually part of this economic siege. The murderers of humanity think that with money they can buy not only weapons but also conscience and silence. Now hold on tight, because we are reaching the darkest, most nauseating point. The Epstein files, documents revealed by D.W. Turksay, show that this is not just a prostitution scandal. It is a map of how global elites are held hostage by blackmail and how this crime network is sustained. The massive wheel of money, with a full $1.1 billion passing through a single account of Jeffrey Epstein, rotating through Russian correspondent banks. What was it hiding? Remember his famous email from 2011, "Bury everything." What were they burying? The bodies, the souls of children, or the evidence of this servitude system? The allegations that abuse videos were put up for sale for $1 Bitcoin, then $8,000 at that cursed place called Zorro Ranch remain in the documents. Even more horrifying, look at the FB diagram painting by victim artist Maria Farmer. In the painting, Epstein is depicted as an unreal figure inside a flying saucer, while his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell is painted as a reptile with a pearl necklace. And under that tree, Bill Clinton and Donald Trump also stand as part of that dark shadow. Now to the part that burns our hearts the most, the Turkey connection. The documents state that Epstein's plane, named Lolita Express, came to Turkey 9 times, flew from Istanbul to Tel Aviv, and these visits were usually made via Greece. Even more frightening is the allegation that underage girls who did not speak English from Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine were put on these planes and taken to those cursed islands. So-called massage training sessions at luxury hotels in Antalya, and the names mentioned in these correspondences show how this dirty network tried to turn Turkey into a logistical stop. The murderers of humanity enslaved the world not only with bombs but also with such perverse blackmail networks. Why are these truths not echoed on television and in newspapers? Because, as The Guardian notes, media and politics are under siege by AIPAC. AIPAC plans to spend $100 million to purge progressive and Israel-critical candidates in the 2024 elections. As Wisconsin Congressman Mark Pocan says, this is truly toxic money. Anyone in politics who says there is a genocide in Gaza is targeted by this lobby and immediately labeled anti-Semitic. This label is the biggest and dirtiest shield used by the regime that is the murderer of humanity to cover up its crimes. Because Western media has become the servant of this money. The deaths of over 130,000 children, women, and civilians are dismissed as a tragedy, while Israel's security is served as a sacred right. Those who speak the truth are silenced. Consciences are mortgaged by lobby money. But friends, is everything over? No. Even from within this dark order of servitude, the cry of conscience rises. Listen to the Satmar Rebbe, Aaron Teitelbaum. He speaks to his own co-religionists. Trumpism is brainwashing. It is a disease. He raises a flag against this Zionist evangelical alliance by saying, our duty is not to fix America, but to protect ourselves from this filth. Or Noah Argamani, the woman who was held hostage for 8 months, experienced that horror. But after being rescued, refused to become a hero and became a true voice of conscience for those still inside and for the cessation of this war. As a figure on the Time 100 list, she does not allow the system to turn her into a propaganda tool. All over the world, there are Jewish activists saying, reject AIPAC, and shouting, not in my name, on the streets. True humanity will rise on the shoulders of those who do not surrender to this murderous mentality and its global servants, those who do not bow down to the $100 million lobbies. That is enough for today, friends. The tea is finished, the coffee is gone cold, but the trouble is not over. As you have seen, the world is not just those fancy diplomatic tables. There are billions of dirty dollars spinning in the background. Blackmail networks built on the size of children and servitude contracts signed on the destruction of a nation. But we will continue to speak, research, and expose this murderer of humanity projection at every opportunity. My request to you is to consider what you have heard today not just as a podcast, but as a call to awakening. Continue to think, question, and most importantly, remain human. Until the next episode, farewell.